Well, as for you, my lord, I'm astonished that you persist in trying to prove something to me with the testimony of expert witnesses that I can perfectly well find out for myself with a simple experiment. So witnesses, they're useful, of course, in difficult matters in the past. A judge might, for example, call a witness to establish whether Luigi stabbed Giovanni. But he's not going to call a witness to establish that Giovanni was stabbed at all, because he's got the wound in front of him. Do you see? He could see it with his own eyes.
Modesty never came easily to the young professor.
I render grace to God that it has pleased him to make me alone the first observer of an admirable thing kept hidden all these ages.
By making the invisible now visible, the telescope was starting to revolutionize astronomy. From ancient times, astronomers had tried to account for the observed motions of heavenly bodies by assuming that they were attached to transparent crystal spheres, rotating sphere within sphere. The Greek astronomer Ptolemy worked out the system in great detail to explain the motions of the sun, the moon, the stars, and the planets, all that could be seen with the naked eye. At the center of Ptolemy's intricate system sat the Earth, solid and unmoving.
The Ptolemaic system was filled with ingenious geometrical devices. It made it possible for people to compute where the planets were to be, and this was useful, let us say, for astrology. It was useful if you just wanted to keep track of where things were in the sky. But it wasn't perfect.
60 years before the telescope, a Polish clergyman, Nicholas Copernicus, noticed that the calculations needed to predict the positions of the planets in the sky would be simplified if he assumed that the sun, rather than the Earth, were at the center of the universe.
Copernicus described the sun as though on a royal throne, ruling the planets that circled around it. It was a wonderful system aesthetically. For decades after his book, most astronomers simply suspended judgment. The reason was that there was no observational evidence that the Earth moved. In fact, it seemed almost silly that the Earth moved.
In the Copernican system, the Earth was never still. It had two separate motions, revolving around the sun each year and spinning on its axis once each day.
Copernicus was a little bit reluctant even to publish his system because he figured there would be a lot of criticism of it.
The thing that Copernicus suggested just made him really the laughing stock of Europe, because he was saying here is the Earth is actually whizzing round at a huge speed, about 700 or 800 miles an hour. That's just going round on its axis, and in addition it's going round the sun at about 30 miles a second. I mean, they were saying this is just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, look at the ground, it's as solid as you can see. Clearly the Earth is not moving. Nothing could be more obvious than the fact that the Earth isn't moving. If it was moving, everything would be flying off it. I mean, church steeples would fall down, birds couldn't keep up with it, clouds would go disappearing over the western horizon and things like this.
Galileo had read Copernicus and already suspected that the Copernican system was correct. But even with his telescope, he did not see a way of proving that the Earth moved around the sun. First, he would make a move himself, back to Tuscany, the land of his birth. Florence, the Tuscan capital, held a great attraction for the rising young star. The exalted home of Dante and Michelangelo, Florence had been ruled for centuries by the Medici family. A source of great wealth and power, the family dominated banking and commerce and was influential in church matters. The spheres of the Medici coat of arms adorned palaces throughout the city. For Galileo, there could be no greater honor than to have as a patron Duke Cosimo de' Medici.
Galileo is looking for social improvement. And he has tried several times to get patronage from the Medici. And here, he sees his ticket. The Grand Duke of Tuscany is one of 4 brothers. Galileo has discovered 4 moons around Jupiter. Shrewdly wants to name him after his prospective Medici patrons.
A copy of the Starry Messenger, Galileo's finest telescope, and a personal plea are dispatched to Florence.
It is up to our sovereign whether I spend the rest of my days here in Venice or return to Florence. If I'm to return, I desire that your Highness shall give me leave and leisure without my being occupied in teaching. Finally, I desire of His Highness that in addition to the title of mathematician, he will annex the title of philosopher.
Galileo points out how bad his position is at Padua, how he doesn't have any time for research, how he's overrun by students, and what he would like would be to serve a great ruler and to do research.
A few weeks later, a letter was issued from the Medici offices at the Uffizi, inviting Galileo to join the Medici court as mathematician and philosopher. Here he would be at the center of Florentine intellectual and social life.
Florentines were known for arguing about everything, having lively discussions, and that's what Galileo was about. And there was tremendous appeal for him, and even more status in being attached to the court of the Grand Duke. And there were friends of Galileo's who warned him that he wouldn't be as safe in his radical beliefs in Tuscany, that Venice had more of a sense of independence from the Pope than Tuscany had.
The Medicis were rich and cultured, but they were also beholden to Rome. With strong ties to the Vatican, the family had produced many popes and cardinals. They could not have known the difficulties their new philosopher would bring upon himself.